Hey everyone. Yes, my office is a mess. Got more I don't even know. We're doing a food packing next week for homeless and I probably got maybe 15 boxes came in today. So they're everywhere. But hey, welcome to class. One of my favorite weeks. Even though there's almost no finance in this week. This is a week of science. Science, science, science. And we're predominantly looking at how the brain gets, how we deal with the brain, and how we've learned from the brain. The goals of the week, obviously, to understand how to study the brain and look at some of its history. History, by the way, is incredible. Looking back when people did, they cut part of the skull off, and we don't know why. Best guess is it was like epilepsy, but we don't know that. Anyways, and they put them back on, the skull back on, and they lived. The brain regrew, the skull regrew. So it's pretty common about 1,000 years ago. Yeah, in Central America mainly, but elsewhere as well. But anyways, we've come a long ways in studying the brain. Identify parts of the brain and the predominant functions. Not going to spend a lot of time on that, but clearly some. Understand the term neuroplasticity and what it means and why it's so important. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to keep adapting and changing. How we learn, how we change behaviors. Like neuroplasticity. Without neuroplasticity, we live in a world where brains sort of decay away, and now we see that we can come up when we can learn new things, and we continue to stretch. The same part of the brain can be used for many things. Um, Understand the term and importance of neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters allow connections between. So, like, imagine we have this. My fingers are a wire, and there's this little bitty gap, a synapse across which the electric impulse has to go. Neurotransmitters fill that up, and they allow it to allow information, we'll call it information, to go back and forth. Not quite information, but you get the idea. Um, and we'll look at neurotransmitters, oxytocin, the big one, dopamine, serotonin. And we'll see that, they all, I mean, we can be addicted to, any of them. And oxytocin is probably the most widely looked at here in this class today, um, or this week. But even that, I mean, it used to be the trust hormone, the love hormone, whatever you want to call it. It builds trust. It can be developed synthetically. We can create it. If we do all clap together, if we do chants, if we give someone a hug, we are flooded with oxytocin, and oxytocin gets us to trust the other person better. So fascinating. It's a whole bunch. Paul Zak has a bunch of videos this week. Watch them. Um, then we'll look at neuroeconomics and neurofinance and predict maybe what impact might this conceivably have in the future. Um, so yeah, why do I think this week is so exciting? I think this week is so exciting because it changes so much. Even a few years ago, when we first developed this class, we were just talking about like Neuralink was somewhere on the horizon. Now people have it, and we can see how it helps. And like where are we going as a society is anyone's guess. But if we morph some version of computers and AI in our own brain, I mean, it's not real difficult to imagine a world that is significantly different than where we are right now. Um, and it's scarier too, like really scary at times. Like, do we want to know? There's a great, rather old, but there's a great 60 Minutes episode on this week that if you watch it and you see, like, do we want people to be able to read our minds? And we're getting to the point where we'll be able to read our minds. And like, where is the line of guilt? Like, oh man, I could kill him. Does that mean you could kill him? Does that mean we have to stop you? Like, there's a whole lot that's really messy, and I don't think we really want. I don't. I will say, maybe I can't speak for you, but I don't know if we really want everything to be known. If you think, man, I can't stand this guy, and that guy can read that. That's not this. Yeah. So it'll change the way we think for sure. Um, so looking at how we think about things, and how we learn from the brain. I mean, surgery is a common one. The numbers are pretty staggering. Over 600,000 brain surgeries in a given year. And we learn something from them. So when we do that, we cut open a brain. Now, I don't want you to have to go cut up brains to look at them. There's other ways. Um, there's CAT scans, PET scans. Problem with them is they're radiation based. There's EEGs, which electrically based. Actually, we had a EEG system here for a few years with the previous dean. We no longer do, but it's a skull cap, and you have like little impulses, and that measure where the electricity is flowing, and that sort of tells us what part of the brain is working. And from what part of the brain is working, we can see, what are you thinking about? And if you're thinking about, for example, risk decisions or math decisions or whatever, we can see what part of the brain is working. That is relatively cheap, a couple $100, definitely under 2-3,000 at max. But okay, max for any useful purpose for what we have. Um, but then you get functional magnetic imaging machines, much more state of the art. Couple $1 million easy, $3 to $5 million, and they literally will store where oxygen goes in the brain, which is a better and it's a cleaner, and it's amazing, and the technology is incredible, and we're now seeing it in everything from scanning people to even scanning dogs and other animals, and we see how they think, and they think similar to us in many ways. The brain looks a lot like ours. Parts of the brain are devoted differently. Like we have much more for our eyes than they do. They have much more for their nose than we do. But the same basic idea for many of the things. And you can also do blood tests, and now with AI, you're seeing more. The scans are picking up more, and we're looking at for patterns. Essentially, what we're doing, this is data mining in a way. We don't know when someone says you're thinking of X, we don't know where you're thinking. But if we put them all together, we can see like this part and this part all fire at the same time. Then when we see when those two things fire, we infer that you're thinking about X, whatever that is. So, yeah, so it's a really fascinating week, and looking at how the brain works is just staggeringly interesting. We'll look at Phineas Gage. Phineas Gage had a large metal rod go through his head, and it influenced dramatically his behavior. Um, there's some really cool videos of on it. Okay, I don't mean cool that he got killed, like, he eventually died, a decade later, but cool in the sense that they're fascinating, absolutely fascinating. They showed us early insights in how the brain worked. Um, and I think we're near the end of this. I think we are much closer to the beginning of how the brain works than the end. We don't know so much. And there's not a day, week goes by that people aren't pushing the envelope of what we do know on this. This is a gigantic horizon of learning and knowledge and everything coming together with technology, and it's a lot of ethical questions. Like, what can we do? What don't we want to do? Like, if we know that we can make someone better by doing X, do we do it? Do we, I mean, this is really slippery slope stuff. And it gets into another question, which I don't really want to get into here, but like, do we have free will? It used to be, if you go back, I don't know, 1,000 years ago, and someone who had epilepsy or something would start screaming or shaking. People thought they had demons and they had to be saved from the demons. Well, now we know it's not, and it can be treated. How much of that is going to be in the future that we know, like something different, like, oh, they think of that because of X or Y or whatever. So it's really, really fascinating, and lots of tough questions that come up. Do we want to know all of it? And, do we have the right to know what other people are thinking and all of this stuff? Um, yeah. So I'm not going to get into all of it. I will let Robert Sapolsky do a lot of that. He is amazing, spectacular. Stanford professor. I can't recommend watching his videos enough. He is great. Read his books; they are great as well. We talked about neuroplasticity a little earlier. Also, we talk a little about stress here and like the reward, like addictions. Where does that line? Like, I'm trying to put this as nicely as possible. Stress, let's do that one. We know that. A little stress, probably not enough. Too much stress is too much. Where in the middle do we want to be? And then how do we get addicted to things, and what can we get addicted to? And it seems like we can get addicted to many, many things, including our phones, including, video games, including gambling, including drugs, etc. I it's too easy to say don't get addicted, but we all do. We look at our phones way too much, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So how can we deal with that? It's tough. And we look at even something as seemingly scientific as PTSD, stress, trauma, post-traumatic stress. And what we see is that even there, we don't have a full picture of everything. Like, why it seems that community matters much more than we would like to give it credit for, but community matters, preventing PTSD and et cetera. So I really think, and so many levels, community helps solve a lot of these problems with stress, with PTSD, with addictions, et cetera. And in a world where community is getting more and more divided and subdivided and polarized and all of that, it's not super surprising that we have a lot of mental health issues. Um, yeah, I would love to go on in that. I don't think I should probably do that, but there's an awful lot there. I left this section in on COVID. I might take that out, but it's sort of interesting. Mind reading. We talked about stress. I already did that. Um, Oh yeah, stress has long run implications as well, even before you're born. So if the mother is very stressed, the baby will be will have evidence of the stress. Well, that's a nice way of saying is affected by the stress. And multiple generations are affected by stress, which is also amazing. And like, I don't want to get super scientific even on it, but like, just from a super simple anecdotal story. Um, when I bought the grocery stores, my uncles could not believe that I was going to have debt because my grandfather didn't like debt, and he taught people that debt was bad, etc. And consequently, they carried on for multiple generations. Um, and we see the same thing. If someone breaks into your house, your grandparents' house, they're going to tell you to lock the door. They're going to be much more careful about things. But it also has stress at any point in time, from early childhood to teenage years lots of things cause stress. And there was a great book on this, by the way, a phenomenal book, a book I cannot recommend strongly enough, is The Body Keeps Score. Highly recommended. Anyone, whether you're in this class, you talk to a friend who's in this class, it is a great book. But stress in all aspects of life, and stress affects people differently, but it affects everyone. I had a good friend in college, and he said stress kills. And the more I look at it, the more I think I'm getting to that agreement that it does. And how do we deal with stress is super important. And the last day of 402, I do a wrap up, uh, last graduation, last class, first graduation address speech. And in it, I always talk about one of the most important things you're going to do is you're going to have to deal with a lot of stresses and find a way to deal. I don't know what yours is. Mine's running or lifting or yoga or whatever, but like, you have to find something, and it shouldn't be, like alcohol, and it shouldn't be drugs, and it should like. But for too many people, that is what those self medicated things are, and they're not. There are better answers out there. Um, so yeah, so that is a fascinating week. Then we look at memory, and I know I keep saying this, but my dad is pretty severe dementia, and going through this and looking at how the brain works is just mind. Okay, I almost said it. Mind blowing. Sorry, forgot what I was talking about for a second. Unintentional pun, but it is unbelievable almost how well we have evolved to remember things, sort of, because we don't remember things exactly. We tell ourselves stories, and those stories change over time. So our memories change over time. I was listening to a really cool podcast this morning, and at the gym, and they were talking about um, how a memory. I think it was a TED Talk uh, video or podcast, and they were talking about helping people who've lost everything. So they don't have pictures anymore of their childhood home, if they're in a war zone or a flood or whatever, and then helping them recover those memories and be able to share those memories. And with AI, essentially, if you tell me a story, I can come up with a picture. And what they found was that if the picture was a little blurry, the memory was a little better for the person, because then our memories are like that. Our memories are like very very flexible. Like if, at 1 minute I'll tell you one thing, then like I'll think about it, and then maybe it's something different. So don't think of memories as actually completely 100% factual until you fact check them. Like we lie to ourselves, especially if you think you might have messed up in that scenario. You're going to forget that part of it, and you're going to remember how you were the hero in that part of it, etc. So memories are fascinating. Yeah, just absolutely fascinating. I could study. We could do a whole course on memories. I talked about stress, PTSD. The other thing we talk about some is the whole mind, gut, brain, however you want to think of it. Connection and how much of our thinking actually happens in the intestines. Dopamine and it's like is created like almost as much in the brain as it is in the gut. And how ultra processed foods and how stress affect that. It's not pretty. Let me just say that. I don't want to get into a whole lot. This becomes a little too sciencey, but it seems like a healthy gut is important for a healthy mind, and it's not something that I would have envisioned 10 years ago. So those are some of the things we talked about this week. Super fascinating. If you are interested in this, please go back and look at the spreadsheet because there is so much that's come out between this semester, last semester. Like this is the area of behavioral finance that every day something new is happening. And some of it is, from technology firms, Neuralink, etc. But some of it is just from people doing research and doing surgeries and finding something different, even after millions of surgeries have been done. So, anyways, enjoy. Thank you so much. Hope everything is good with you all, and have a good class. So, thanks everyone. And if I remember how to turn it off, I will be great. Oh, there we go.